Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. This episode is brought to you by AdamandEve.com. If you go to AdamandEve.com and type in the promo code FOOTBALL, you'll get 50% off just about any item in the store. I'm your host, Jesse Tapia, and for today's show, it's pretty much just like it's the new title of the show. It's going to be all fantasy football. First segment, we're going to first segment, we're going to do some winners and losers from week 9. We got a lot of winners, got plenty of losers. After that, we're gonna do talk about some people who started off hot, starting to cool off, and for the third segment, we'll talk about Ezekiel Elliott actually, and a couple more other players about him around there. Talk about Alfred Morris, who you should pick up, who you shouldn't, and then for the last segment of the show, we're gonna just do who to start, who to sit. Who's a good streaming option if you need a quarterback, running back, or anything like that, and our must starts. So it's going to be a fun show. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with some winners. Winner for the Buffalo was Tyrod Taylor for the Buffalo Bills. Excuse me, I can't really talk today, but Tyrod Taylor had 285 yards and 3 total touchdowns if you started him. And actually, I'm just going to go like game by game and do winners and losers. I mean, I'm probably not going to pick guys from like the San Francisco 49ers or Cleveland Browns or anything like that, because if you got players like that, I'm sure you're probably not winning your league. Not trying to be mean or anything like that, but it is what it is. So yeah, winner from that game was Tyrod Taylor. He had, like I said, 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tyrod Taylor is a guy I've been trying to get on my fantasy team for a while. I got him I play in like 3 leagues right now. Yeah, I play in 3 leagues right now. And one of them I have him, I think. I can't remember exactly. Actually, no, I don't have him in any of my leagues. Whenever I tried to pick him up, someone else would always get him before me, and I've tried trading for him, but I just really don't want to give up too much out of my team because I'm currently fighting for a playoff spot right now. So, yeah, if you got him on your team, you've been pretty happy so far this season. Tyrod's been a guy who he hasn't really turned the ball over at all. I think I can't remember exactly. It's like for every 6 touchdowns he throws, he has a 1 interception. So I mean, I was never good with math, so I'm not even gonna try and get into it. But yeah, he's been really solid this season. Hasn't thrown for too many interceptions. Actually, not gonna say no interceptions, but he's thrown for a minimum amount of interceptions, not too many at all. Like I said, he just doesn't turn the ball over. So if you got him, you've been pretty happy with him. He also had 35 rush yards in that game. And a loser for the Buffalo Bills, if you had him, I'm sorry, you're probably expecting him to have a good game, but LaShawn McCoy only had 12 carries for 25 yards. And I actually have him in one of my 12-man leagues. And I was expecting him. LaShawn McCoy is going to have a good game, and he only gave me around 3 points, I think. It's a PPR type of league, and you get in this league, you get, I think, a quarter of a point for carries also. So yeah, he got me around 3 points, I think it was, around there. And it was just a really bad game for him. And let's go to the Jets, winners from there. I mean, if you started Josh McCown, you're a smart guy out there, smart or girl, But yeah, Josh McCown, he only threw for 140 yards, but he did have 2 touchdowns. So it's a pretty solid game. If you were streaming for quarterback that week and you just threw Josh McCown out there to see how he'd do, yeah, you lucked out on that one. If you had Matt Forte, I mean, I'm sure there's guys out there who have been just, oh yeah, Matt Forte, he's going to break out. He's going to have a breakout game. This game, it's going to be this one. And that's been week after week. And you know what? Matt Forte finally had that breakout game. He had 77 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think those were the first 2 touchdowns he scored all season. So like I said, if you were just sitting, holding on to Matt Forte, just waiting for that breakout game, congrats. It finally paid off. And you know what? He's got the Bucks going against the Bucks this week. And we'll talk more about how he's going to do, because I think he's going to have a really good game. Also, I picked him up this week just because I needed an extra running back to start. But since Ezekiel Elliott's going to be suspended, and we'll talk again, that's another thing we're going to talk about. It's going to be a fun show, actually. There's going to be a lot to talk about. But, yeah, Matt Forte, he's going to do pretty good this in Week 10 too. And my last winner out of this game was Robbie Anderson, another guy I picked up in my 12-man league. He had 4 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown. And if you have him in any league, I mean, that's good. But if you had him in a PPR league, that's even better. So, yeah, those are my winners and losers for that game, for the Falcons and Panthers game. I'm sure if you had Matt Ryan, I'm going to consider you a winner right there. That's a winner right there. 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, had an interception, but 313 yards and 2 touchdowns and too bad. Loser, Devontae Freeman. If you have Devontae Freeman, stuff him on your bench. I'm going to say that again. Stuff Devontae Freeman on your bench if you have him. Steve Sarkisian, for some reason, does not like running the ball. He's the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, and I don't know what it is. As a team, the Falcons only had 18 total carries. So, yeah, if you got Devontae Freeman, I'm not going to say stuff him on the bench, actually, because you know he could always be due for a breakout game. But, I mean, if you want to keep riding that wave, good luck to you. I don't have him, so I don't have to worry about him. But if you have Devontae Freeman on your team, I'd be pretty concerned about him. Julio Jones had a really good game. Consider him a winner, but he's a good chance that if he would have caught that touchdown late in the game, I think it was going to be about like maybe a 40-yard touchdown or something like that. He finished the game with 6 receptions and 118 yards. So, yeah, if you had him on your team, I mean, there's a good chance that he might have lost you your game because he dropped, I think it was a 40-yard touchdown easy in the end zone by himself. So, yeah, that's a winner, but that's a winner with an asterisk right there. Asterisk? I don't know how to say it exactly, but, yeah. Whatever the word is, that's what he has by his name. If you had Cam Newton, you're also a winner. He had 137 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but the old Cam Newton showed up. He had 9 carries for 86 yards. I'm not going to say 9 carries like he got handed the ball off. You know what I mean. He took off with the ball 9 times and ran for 86 yards, and he had a touchdown. Another winner was Christian McCaffrey. He has 66 yards and a touchdown, and receiving the ball, he had 5 catches for 28 yards. So again, if you have him in your PPR league, you're an extremely happy person. Loser, if you had Jonathan Stewart, no bueno. Only had 11 carries for 21 yards. And for those that don't speak Spanish, no bueno means no good. Devin Funchess had 5 receptions and 86 yards. So that's another winner for me right there. And yeah, those are the winners and losers for those games, right? For that game right there, for the Colts. Winner, if you Jacoby Brissett was a winner. He's been a solid quarterback so far this season, and I was so close. I can't remember. I was deciding, do I start Marcus Mariota against Baltimore, or do I pick up Jacoby Brissett off of waivers and start him against the Texans? And I didn't do too bad starting Mariota. I think he had around 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I would have did a lot better with Jacoby Brissett, or at least would have gotten a few more points since he finished with 308 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had 12 rushing yards, so that's just another point right there. And another winner for that game is T.Y. Hilton. If you had him, you were an extremely happy person. He had 5 receptions for 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jack Doyle, also someone who's been stepping up. He had 8 catches for 63 yards. And if you had anyone else on the Colts, that was a losing thing right there. So as far as the Texans go, if you were brave enough to start Tom Savage and pick him up, I guess I'll consider that a winner. He had 219 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, that's not too good, but it's not too bad. So another winner was Lamar Miller. Even though he only had 57 yards rushing, he had 34 yards receiving. So that's around 100 yards right there. And if it's a PPR league, those 3 receptions, that's going to be about 1.5 points right there. Or actually, yeah, it should be. Yeah, 1.5 points right there if it's half point PPR. DeAndre Hopkins, I'm sure most owners who had him were very scared. He had 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown, so he came through. And those are my winners and losers for that game. This has been a pretty fun segment so far, actually. I'm getting pretty excited. But Cincinnati, if you had anyone on that team, big loser right there. I'm not even going to – there's literally no one – I guess Joe Mixon, he had 31 yards and a touchdown. And let's see what he did receiving. Receiving, he had 15 yards and 3 catches. Croft, I guess the tight end for Cincinnati, 79 yards. But other than that, there's no one worth mentioning. If you had AJ Green and needed a big game out of him, Yeah, sorry about that. He only had one catch for 6 yards, got ejected. Blake Bortles, I'm not going to consider him a winner. I mean, he had 259 yards and a touchdown. If you were looking for a quarterback and needed someone to throw in there and you threw Blake Bortles in, I'm sure he did a decent job for you. And Marquise Lee, I'm just going to name him as my only other winner for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had 8 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown. And again, if you had him and started him in your PPR league, you must have been a happy person. This is going to be a fun one for winners and losers for the Tampa Bay Bucks and New Orleans Saints games. There are absolutely no winners on the Tampa Bay Bucks. If you started Doug Martin like I did, let's all take a moment and just... that one hurt right there. He only had he only gave me 1.5 points, only had 8 carries and 7 yards. Just like I said, everyone else on that team, big loser. So if you had anyone on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for offense, they didn't do good for you. Winner, Drew Brees, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mark Ingram, I'm not going to call him a winner. He only had 77 yards and only 1 catch for 2 yards. So you're not going to consider him a winner yet. Big winner, Alvin Kamara had 68 yards rushing the ball, 1 touchdown. And did even better receiving the ball. He had 6 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. So if you had Alvin Kamara, and that's in a PPR league, then you probably had north of 20 points, or at least around there. So congrats on that one. That dude, he's been a really big help for on the New Orleans offensive side. So yeah, he's just been really solid so far. Michael Thomas, I got him on my team. He gave me around 10 points in my PPR league. He had 8 catches for 65 yards. I'm not sure. I guess it's 10 points. I should be happy, but I really need those touchdowns. Really about to hit this playoff push. In one of my other leagues, Ted Ginn, he's actually a winner too. 4 receptions, 59 yards, and a touchdown. So you really can't ask for more. I mean, if you were looking for a receiver and you threw him out there, congrats. As for the New York Giants and LA Rams, the only winner for the Giants, I guess, is Eli Manning. He had 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Other than that, Evan Ingram too. 4 catches, 70 yards receiving, and 1 touchdown. Excuse me, I got really bad allergies. It's starting to be winter time in Sacramento for some reason, even when it's winter. I mean, I still get these allergies really bad, but that's a whole different topic. But Jared Goff, big winner. 311 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interception. If you had him, like I said, I've been saying before, you were a happy person. Todd Gurley, 59 yards, 2 touchdowns, another winner. Robert Woods, he's been off and on so far, but he's another winner for that. 4 catches, 70 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Let's move on to the other big blowout of the weekend. It was the Philadelphia Eagles and Denver Broncos. Brock Osweiler, big loser right there. 208 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. You had a Denver running back and you started him. Big loser right there too. As far as receiving goes, the only winner on that, Demaryius Thomas, 8 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. Carson Wentz, big winner, 199 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jay Ajayi, if you were brave enough to start him, I know I don't have him on any of my teams. If I had him, I would have stuck him on my bench. He only had 8 carries, but 77 yards and a touchdown. So if you had him, congrats. And if you're playing in a 14-team league or any of those other crazy leagues with all those amount of people in that league, and you started Corey Clement, I believe his first name is Corey, I can't remember exactly, but yeah, we're going to call him Corey right now, last name Clement. He had 51 yards rushing the ball and 2 touchdowns. So if you had him out there by some chance, congrats. Alshon Jeffrey, another big winner, 6 catches, 84 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And that's going to be it for that game. Ravens and Titans. Big winner, or actually not big winner. No big winners in this game, actually. Some winners, but like I said, no big winners. Joe Flacco, I'm not going to consider him a winner or a loser. He had 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Loser, Alex Collins, 13 carries, 43 yards, no touchdowns. And a winner, Jeremy Maclin, he had 8 receptions for 98 yards. Let's head to the Titans. Winner, Marcus Mariota, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Running backs, didn't do too well. If you had Derrick Henry, you probably enjoyed that touchdown, but no, that's all he gave you. Rashard Matthews, another winner, 4 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. Cardinals and 49ers, not even going to get into that game. You had Adrian Peterson, you were a big winner. Anyone else? Drew Stand, you might be a winner too. He had 2 touchdowns, 201 yards. Larry Fitz had 5 catches for 70 yards, I believe. And if you have anyone from the 49ers on your team other than Carlos Hyde, you're probably near the bottom of your league. So that's how that is. Washington Redskins, big winners. Wish I wouldn't have dropped him. Actually, don't regret dropping him, but once I do, Rob Kelly. It's a winner right there. 14 carries, 18 yards, 2 touchdowns. No real winners for Kirk Cousins or the Washington receivers because there was no touchdowns. Best receiver was Vernon Davis with 6 catches and 72 yards. So, I mean, you can't really complain about that. As for the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, I believe, had around 200 and let me just double check that right here. I think he had 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So, I mean, I guess I'm not going to consider him a winner. 297 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Actually, yeah, I consider Russell Wilson a winner. He had 77 yards rushing too, so I know that helped. Doug Baldwin, big winner. 7 receptions, 108 yards, and 1 touchdown. Anyone else? Loser, Jimmy Graham didn't do too much that game. Chiefs and Cowboys. We're going to talk a lot more about these two teams too going forward in the podcast later on, actually. Winner, Alex Smith, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Loser, Kareem Hunt, only 9 carries, 37 yards. Like I said, we'll talk more about him. And Travis Kelce was a winner. 7 receptions, 73 yards, and 1 touchdown. Tyreek Hill, if you had him, congrats. He only had 2 catches for 64 yards, but one of them was a touchdown. Ezekiel Elliott, feel bad for the guys that have been riding him so far this season for their team. He's suspended for 6 games. We're going to talk a lot more about that later on in the show. 93 yards, 1 touchdown. Dak Prescott, 2 touchdowns, 249 yards. Those are my winners right there. And for the Raiders and Dolphins game, gotta hurry up before I gotta close out this segment. But winner, I'm gonna go Marshawn Lynch, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jared Cook, 8 catches, 126 yards. Another winner. Loser, Amari Cooper from that team, 4 catches, 58 yards. And Michael Crabtree, 3 catches for 40 yards. So those are my losers for the Raiders. Winner, if you started Jake Cutler, you're a winner. 311 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I mean, Julius Thomas, another winner, 6 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Kenyon Drake. Actually, if you started Damian Williams, you also lucked out. He had a touchdown. And Kenyon Drake, I'm going to consider him a loser. He gave me quite a bit of points in my PPR league, but that fumble kind of killed me right there. And as far as, let's do the last game. Lions at Packers. Big winners. Matt Stafford, 361 yards, 2 touchdowns. That helped me out. Amir Abdullah, if you got him in a PPR league, he did well. He had 48 yards, 1 touchdown, and he had 1 catch for 9 yards. Golden Tate, 7 catches, 113 yards. That's a must-have in your PPR league. Marvin Jones had a big game too, 7 catches, 107 yards, and 2 touchdowns. There was no real losers from the Detroit Lions offense. I mean, the only really players that you have on that team are like Riddick and guys like that, and they all did well. And then losers, for Green Bay, any of their running backs, and I guess I'm not going to consider any of their receivers a winner because they had no touchdowns and no high yards. Brent Hundley didn't do much, so yeah, that's going to top it off for winners and losers. Next segment, we're going to talk about players who are starting to slow down, so stay tuned. Hey, are you looking to spice things up in the bedroom? Have you been fantasizing about surprising your lover with an adventurous new toy or adult movie? Well, AdamandEve.com has an offer you're not going to be able to resist. If you go to AdamandEve.com, and for a limited time only, you'll get 50% off just about any item. But that's not all. Oh, no. When you select your one item at 50% off, you'll also receive 3 free adult DVDs. You know, just in case you need that little inspiration. Plus, a free extra gift so sensual, I can't even mention it on this podcast. And to top that all off, they're even willing to throw in free shipping on your entire order. And I know I love it, and I know you guys love it. Free shipping is the best. And no, they're not kidding about any of this. So check out AdamandEve.com today for the special offer. You'll get 50% off one item when you type in the promo code FOOTBALL for the offer code upon checkout. When you do that, you'll get 3 free DVDs, a free extra gift, and that free shipping. Just use the offer code FOOTBALL, FOOTBALL at AdamandEve.com. Again, that's FOOTBALL, football at AdamandEve.com. All right, and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Last segment, we did some winners and losers, and for this one, I'm just going to throw some players off the top of my head, just talk about who's been probably disappointing, and who just needs to step it up. So let's get into it. Before I even talk about that, man, my ears are killing me right now. That intro song is really loud with the whole rocking guitars and stuff like that. But yeah, let's get into it. If you have Kareem Hunt right now, you're probably a little bit worried. He last game he only got around 50% of the snaps on the offense for Kansas City, and it looks like Kansas City last year they finished off 12-4, but usually they start off really strong. And then they have this period, like around this point, maybe a little bit later in the season, where anyone who is doing really good, like Alex Smith right now, if you have him, he's still a top quarterback right now in fantasy football, and he's been playing pretty well too so far. And then the same with Tyreek Hill, but you're starting to see that they're starting to hit that little drop. They've lost 3 out of their last 4. And I mean, Travis Kelce, if you got him, he's going to be a guy that you never really have to worry about. Just based off of because Alex Smith just loves throwing the tight ends. Those are like his blankets when he's scared. And but talking about Kareem Hunt, he only had 45 yards, I think, against Denver, and then against Dallas. I mean, Dallas, they have DeMarcus Lawrence, but that's not really a defense. It's like, oh wow, they're gonna shut down the run game. They're very scary, and you know maybe they are. And I'm just not too well knowledgeable on Dallas's defense. But I mean, the way Kareem Hunt was playing earlier in the season, I mean, he was looking like a MVP candidate. He was looking like it. I'm sure didn't expect him to finish out and be in the top 5 or anything like that as far as that goes. But now it looks like he's starting to slow it down a little bit. Andy Reid is starting to do his Andy Reid magic where, you know what, he's a rookie, so let's ease him into it a little bit more. I have no clue why. I actually think that's why Kansas City hasn't been playing too well. When you got a guy like Kareem Hunt, he's explosive, give him the ball, but you're starting to see Kareem's Hunt production go down a lot more, and if you got him, I'd be a little bit worried right now. I know a buddy in my league who's got him, and he actually has Kareem Hunt and Todd Gurley and Mark Ingram. Don't ask me how he ended up with them. It just happened, okay? So, so he's got those two, so he's going to be lucky. He's going to be good at running back, but I mean, Kareem Hunt was what was pretty much winning him all his games, and now it's back to normal. So if you got Kareem Hunt on your team, I'd start getting a little bit worried because Andy Reid is starting to do that Andy Reid thing where the team's playing well, but you know what? Let's change something up. If it's broke, or if it's not broke, he's going to try and fix it because that's just Andy Reid. So, yeah, we're seeing that. Kareem Hunt is starting to see a lot less snaps, and again, I'm not too sure why, but it's happening. So, yeah, Kareem Hunt only had 37 yards and 9 carries, no touchdowns that game. And then I think against Denver, he had around I can't remember exactly the amount of carries, but he only had around 45 yards, I think. So, yeah, if you have Kareem Hunt, beware. Another player has been really disappointing. Kareem Hunt hasn't been disappointing, but I mean, he's starting to fall off a little bit. But if you've had Amari Cooper so far this season, yeah, I feel that one. I mean, I was lucky enough to trade him. I actually got Michael Crabtree in that trade, but I actually lucked out in that one. But if you got Amari Cooper, other than that 201-yard receiving game where he had 2 touchdowns, you've been frustrated with him, and I completely understand why. Amari Cooper has hands made of stone. I can't prove it, but he's playing like it. He can't catch the ball to save his life. I said on the last football podcast, I think it was, the guy's built like a beast. Okay, he's like a machine basically. And yeah, let's talk about. He's like a robot. Amari Cooper's like a robot. Okay, and the people who built him, they built him everything about him good, but the most important thing they forgot was his hands. Okay, he literally does everything. He runs routes well. He's got the speed. He can make cuts. It's just his hands. He cannot catch the ball to save his life this season, and it's frustrating for fantasy owners, and I'm sure it's frustrating for the Oakland Raiders too, because you know what? I think it was they drafted him in the first round the year they drafted Carr, they drafted in the second round, and they were expecting that to be the 1-2 punch, and Amari Cooper is just not. He's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. Let me see if I can get his points in PPR league for the last few games. Let me see. Oh yeah, I got him right here. At least I should. Where is he at? All right, Amari Cooper. He's on a bye this week, and he's the 25th ranked receiver according to ESPN as far as points go in PPR league. So against Miami, he had 7.8 points. Again, this is all PPR, half point per catch. Against Buffalo, he only had 7.8 points. So, yeah, pretty impressive right there. He matched his total. Then he had that KC game where he had 40 and a half points. He had 11 catches, 210 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And week 1 was his only other good game, which we had 5 catches, 62 yards, and a touchdown. He had 13.7 points for that game. And other than the last 2 games I talked about, the Kansas City game and that week 1 game, he hasn't hit over 5.3 points in any of those other games. So Amari Cooper has been a huge disappointment. He's not getting the ball. He's not catching the ball when it's thrown to him. It's just, I'm not really sure what's going on with him. He really needs to step it up, and I'm sure if you got Amari Cooper, you probably spent a high pick on him earlier in your season in the draft. So, yeah, you gotta. I'm sorry about that, but it is what it is. Amari Cooper, step up your game, please. Another player who's starting to go down, Will Fuller. If you have him, go ahead and drop him. Deshaun Watson, when he was out there, made Will Fuller look really good. Last year, Will Fuller didn't have that good of a season fantasy-wise. He was a rookie. This season, he stepped it up. Wasn't getting too many catches, but Deshaun Watson was getting the ball. And when he got him the ball, they were touchdowns. I think he had 11 catches when Deshaun Watson was out there, and 7 of those were touchdowns. Can't remember exactly the number. Excuse me. But, yeah, Will Fuller, if you have him, send him to the bottom of your bench or drop him because I'm not too high on him going forward. And yeah, he's not going to do anything going forward, I don't think. I just really don't like him at all. And yeah, that's all really I got to say about him is just Will Fuller's done, I think. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that. If you've had Jordan Reed, I made the same mistake as you. Probably thought, you know what? Who knows? Maybe he might not get injured. And you know what? He did. He's been unreliable this season and just don't like him really at all. At all this season. He's no better than Vernon Davis. If you have a choice between Vernon Davis and Jordan Reed right now, it's Vernon Davis 10 times out of 10. Don't overthink it or anything like that, okay? And let's go. Other players who've been disappointing. This one hasn't been disappointing, but he's not getting too many touchdowns. And that's Michael Thomas. He gets around 10 targets a game, and he's bringing in around 7 catches, 6 catches a game too. So that's pretty solid for PPR. Can't remember the last time he had over 100 yards receiving. Let me double check that, but I think it was in his last 4 games. And again, I'll have like stats for that. But I think it was his last 4 games. He hasn't caught a touchdown. Let's see, I got it right here. Oh yeah, since they came off the bye in week 5, he hasn't caught a touchdown. Week 6 against Detroit, he only had 3 catches for 11 yards. Against Green Bay, he had 7 catches for 82 yards. Chicago, he had 7 catches for 77 yards, and against Tampa Bay, he had 8 catches for 65 yards. And in a PPR league, those aren't bad, but you want to see touchdowns. Michael Thomas is supposed to be like a number 1 receiver on your fantasy team. Like I said, I got him on mine. I ended up actually getting Antonio Brown, so I can afford for Michael Thomas not to catch these touchdowns because I got a guy like Antonio Brown. But I mean, before that, I mean, Michael Thomas is a guy that you need him to pull out these touchdowns because he's the number 1 option on a lot of fantasy teams. So yeah, he hasn't been like disappointing, but he hasn't played up to his standards so far this season. If that's what I want to say about that. So yeah, if you got Michael Thomas, you're probably hoping for touchdowns like I am. Maybe he's gonna get it this week against Buffalo, but we'll see. Another disappointment so far this season are the Atlanta Falcons running backs, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Devontae Freeman, he doesn't get the ball too much, and neither does Coleman. I'm not sure why Steve Sarkisian does not like running the ball, but he doesn't. And it's just, I don't understand it. Like, as far as like the whole Falcons offense, Julio Jones had a good game on Sunday against Carolina. He had 6 catches for 118 yards, but other than that, he's been kind of quiet so far this season. I don't even think he's a top 10 receiver in fantasy football this year. And Devontae Freeman should have been a top 5 running back in fantasy. And Tevin Coleman's always a guy, if you got to play in a 12-man PPR league, that's a guy you got to have on your team. And those 2 guys right there, Freeman and Coleman, have just been disappointing in fantasy so far this season. I actually tried trading for Devontae Freeman after one of my drafts in my 12-man league. And luckily, the guy I was trying to trade with didn't give him to me. Because, like I said, he's just not getting the ball a lot. He's not running for many yards, and he's not getting too many touchdowns. So he's been pretty disappointing this season so far. The 2 of them have. Another player who's been disappointing is Doug Martin. I know he was suspended for the first 4 games, and he started off after his suspension. He started off pretty hot. Let me see right here. Started off with 16 points against New England. Then he had 16.3 against Arizona. Then he had 11 against Buffalo. Then he's starting to cool it off a little bit more. He had a 9.8 against Carolina. Again, I'm basing these off of PPR stats and PPR leagues, these point totals. And then against New Orleans, he only had 8 carries for 7 yards. And I'm just saying he's not been like disappointing. It probably wasn't the right word to use, but his play is starting to trend down. And with Ryan Fitzpatrick out, he's playing the Jets this week, so I'm sure the Jets are going to try and stack the box and force Fitzpatrick to throw against them. So I got him in one of my leagues, but I'm not sure if I'm going to start him. I got Kenyon Drake and what other running back? Deion Lewis. I'm really torn on starting Deion Lewis this week, actually, too, because he's going up against Denver, and they don't really give up too many points against running backs in fantasy. So, yeah, I mean, this could be a game where, you know what, he could have another bad game, or he could have a good game, because the New York Jets, I know last week, actually, yeah, I'm going to say he's going to have a bad game this week, because last week the New York Jets held LaShawn McCoy to 12 carries for 25 yards. So, I mean, the Bucs don't really have a quarterback this week. I mean, they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he's that's all I'm going to say. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. So don't really expect Doug Martin to have a big game this week, and I think he's starting to trend down. So that's going to be it for players who have been disappointments and are trending down. This was actually a fun segment. Always nice to talk about why players are doing bad or how they are doing bad. But yeah, in the next segment, we're going to talk about Ezekiel Elliott. Probably talk about, I guess, players who have been really good so far. And well, yeah, so just stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. This last segment, we talked about some disappointments in fantasy, some people who are trending down, and some people who just need to step their game up. And that was actually a fun segment. I mean, like I said, and towards the end of that last segment, I think it was. I mean, I guess this doesn't sound too good, but it's just entertaining to just talk about people who need to do better and all that. So, but now we're gonna say some nice things. We're going to talk about people who have been playing good so far, some surprising people, some people who have just been solid throughout the year, some people, yeah, we're just going to do that. We're going to say good things this segment, okay? So yeah, let's say some good things. Let's say some good things about Marquise Lee, actually, yeah. Marquise Lee, Allen Robinson, when he went down, everyone expected Allen Hurns to be the guy going forward, and he just hasn't been. I mean, Allen Hurns had that one good year. I think he caught 10 touchdowns and had over 1,000 yards. Can't remember exactly how many touchdowns he had, but yeah, everyone's probably been waiting for Allen Robinson to finally break out again and have that good year. I know I've been really high on Allen Hurns the last couple of years. Last year, he was a disappointment. I was like, when Robinson went down, I was like, maybe I should pick him up. So I did, and immediately dropped him 2 weeks after. He hasn't done nothing. But Marquise Lee has been that guy who's just been a steady contributor. Against Tennessee, week 2, he had 7 catches for 76 yards, which was 11.1 points. Next week, he had 8.5 points. Then he had a down game against the Jets, 2.5. Another down game, 5.9. But these last 3 games, he's been playing really well. Against the Rams in week 6, and the Rams are no pushover defense, obviously. I think they're the 3rd-ranked defense right now in my PPR league. It's a 12-man league, and that's according to ESPN. But he had 12.6 points against them. Then he had 8.2 against Indianapolis. It was a pretty solid game from him, that 8.2. He had 4 catches for 72 yards. A touchdown just would have capped it off. And against Cincinnati this past week, week 9, he had 8 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. And these USC receivers, most of them really don't turn out as well as you expect them to. Like Nelson Aguilar, the Philly drafted him in the first round a couple years ago, actually last year. Can't remember exactly. But yeah, he hasn't really turned out to be the receiver everyone thought he was. Now he's playing in the slot, and he's playing a lot better, but just not enough production out of him as far as fantasy goes. And who else am I thinking of? I can't remember exactly anyone else, but I mean, yeah, Marquise Lee, he's just been stepping it up in the last couple of years. I think he's been in the league for about 2 years. I can't remember exactly, maybe even last year. I can't remember exactly how long he's been in the league. It feels like he's been here for a while, but once you're talking about all these players, you get them all mixed up. But yeah, this year he's playing really well. And you know what? Once Allen Robinson comes back next year, I mean, you could see Allen Hurns lose his spot and have Marquise Lee take over in that number 2 spot. But yeah, other than that, he's been a really good player. He's been a surprise. And I'm just, like I said, he's just been a really good player so far this season. Another player I've liked so far this season is Ted Ginn. He's not going to be lights out. He's not going to be like a top 2 receiver for you on your team. And if he is, you're probably not doing too good. But lately, he's been putting up points. The last 4 weeks, he's been putting up really good numbers. Against Detroit, he had 15 points, from 4 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Against Green Bay, he went off. I mean, if he would have scored a touchdown, that just would have been even better. But I mean, even without the touchdown, like I said, he just went off. He had 7 catches for 141 yards. That was 16.6 points right there. Against Chicago, only 7.8 points, but you know what? He got those 7.8 points off of 2 catches for 68 yards. And then against Tampa Bay, he had 4 receptions, 59 yards, and 1 touchdown. And that actually really helped me out in one of my leagues. But yeah, other than that, I'm not too sure if he's going to have a big game against Buffalo. He could. He always does have that opportunity to where he can run one of those fly routes and boom, Drew Brees is going to hit him deep and he could always score on it, or it could be for about 40 yards. So, I mean, if he has a couple of those, that's already 80 yards right there. So, I mean, you're not really too high on him this week against Buffalo. And if you do have him and you're like in a 12-man league, I say start him unless, like you said, you got other receivers that are better. But this week I'm going to be starting him in my 12-man league, and I'm really just hoping he comes through for me. I think right now in that league I'm 4-5 right now, but I'm on a 3-game win streak currently. I started off in that league 0-3. But yeah, ever since then, I've jumped out to 4-2 after that 3-game losing streak. I know I'm running the fantasy football podcast, and you guys are probably thinking you started off 4-3, but you know what? We're making it back. But yeah, Ted Ginn's been not a really good player. He's been a solid player in fantasy this week or in this year, especially having a PPR league. Because other than that, I mean, he's not going to put up too many yards, but he's going to get the job done. Another player that's been playing really well so far this year in fantasy, he's kind of cool. The Jets, he only had 3 it's actually no pun intended, but he had 3 points the last week. And this year for tight end, actually I'm talking about Austin Seferian-Jenkins too. But before I get into him, this year for tight ends, it hasn't been like a big year for them. Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz have been the best 2 tight ends in the league as far as fantasy goes. And then Jack Doyle's been pretty good for the Colts. But other than that, it's pretty much pick and choose. I mean, Seferian-Jenkins against Cleveland. Well, let's just do from when he started off. He had 5.6 points against Miami when he first came back. Then 6.6 against Jacksonville in his second game. Then he went on a nice little run. He had 11.9 points after that. And then 12.6 after that. And then 9.6 after that. And he's kind of cooled down after that. He had 5.3 after that 9.6 performance. And then last week, he only gave me 3 points. He only gave me 3 points against Buffalo, so I wasn't too happy about that. But, I mean, against Tampa Bay, I think he's going to have a really good game. That's his old team. They cut him. I mean, obviously for justifiable reasons, but I think he's going to have a big game this week. Tampa Bay's linebackers they're pretty good, but the secondary has been pretty poor. So, I mean, you might see the linebackers have to go help out. I know as weird as that sounds, but if you got Austin Seferian-Jenkins and you're like on the borderline, like, oh yeah, last 2 weeks he hasn't done too well for me, I'd start him this week against Tampa Bay. I think he's going to have at least a touchdown, probably go for around 40 yards, 5 catches, something like that. So if you got him, start him. Let's see, who else should we talk about? Who else should we say nice things about? Let's say nice things about, let's say AJ Green. He needs a pick-me-up. Last week he let Jalen Ramsey get to him. Jalen Ramsey said some things. AJ Green gets up. Jalen Ramsey pushed him. AJ Green gets up and then puts him in a chokehold, takes him down. AJ Green, I think he gets fined actually like $42,000. I can't remember exactly, but you got to find a huge amount. Right now, he's a 6th ranked receiver, and according to ESPN for ESPN Fantasy, and he's playing Tennessee this week. And I expect him to have a good game. He's going to come out hungry. Ever since he got ejected last week, kind of. Again, I really don't like seeing fantasy players owe it to their fantasy owners or anything like that, because they don't. Just go out there and do your job. If you play well, then you play well. If you don't, then you don't. But since we're doing a fantasy football podcast, he owes it to his fantasy football owners to improve off of that last week, because excuse me, but yeah, he owes it to him to improve off of that last week, because He only went 1 for 6, but other than that, I mean, actually, yeah, I'm just talking about some good players this week, but I forgot to talk about Ezekiel Elliott. If you have Ezekiel Elliott, I feel bad for you. He's going to be serving that 6-game suspension, so unless you are good enough to be in the championship, you're probably not going to get him back for the rest of the season. I'm one of those people who have had him. I actually traded for him in the beginning of the season. I think I gave up Kelvin Benjamin and DeMarco Murray. And again, I know it sounds like a bad trade and a trade I won. And of course I did win it, but it was before the season even started. So yeah, now that Ezekiel Elliott's going to be out, I feel bad for you fantasy owners that have him. I feel you guys. And, but Alfred Morris, if he's on your waivers, go pick him up. I think he's going to be solid. He's not going to be, he could be. I don't know. I haven't been too high on Alfred Morris ever since he left Washington. But with that offensive line, he could do anything. And then Rod Smith is someone, like, if you're in like a 14-man league or even 12-man league PPR, then Rod Smith, he's going to be the second stringer. Oh yeah, before I even get into him, stay away from Darren McFadden, please. I think he's going to be the third string running back. So yeah, if you're thinking about picking him up, don't. Stay away from him. But yeah, get into Rod Smith. That's the sneaky one right there. That's the guy where, you know, he might end up doing the best during Zeke's absence. So yeah, if you have Rod Smith or if he's on the waivers, I don't play him, don't start him this week, but stick him on your bench. If he does well, then that's when you start him. And I know that Ezekiel Elliott being out, that's going to affect Des Bryant. It's going to affect Dak Prescott too. But you know what? I think Dak's going to be just fine. I think that Dak is a good quarterback as it is, with or without Ezekiel Elliott. I know Ezekiel Elliott does help elevate his play just because defense have to plan for him more. But even with Zeke out, I still think Dak Prescott, I don't think he's going to lose a step, man. I think he's going to be playing well still. He's still got Jason Witten, the old guy out there, but he's playing well too. Des Bryant has been off and on. Well, for the most part, he's been on. I think ESPN, let me see what they got him ranked as. ESPN has him as the where is he at? I can't remember. I think in ESPN, though, he's ranked around 12th or 13th right now. So, yeah, he's been pretty solid so far this season. And Dak Prescott's the 5th ranked quarterback in ESPN also. So, if you got him, don't worry about him. Continue starting him. He's going to be a guy who's going to keep playing well. I'm really high on Dak Prescott. So, yeah, like Ezekiel Elliott, if you got him, your season, unless you got 2 solid running backs after that, it's probably going to hurt your season big time. But, I mean, as far as him being out, go pick up Alfred Morris. Go pick up Rod Smith. Again, if I'm you, I stay away from Darren McFadden. Don't worry about Dak Prescott, and don't worry about Des Bryant. They're both I think they'll still be fine. So, yeah, that's how I feel about that. It's just been an odd season so far with this whole suspension thing. It's been, is he suspended? Is he not? Okay, he is suspended. No, he's not. He appealed. Okay, now he's suspended again. Nope. Now he's suspended again. Nope. And then now it's looking like he's finally going to serve the 6-game suspension. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about the Ezekiel Elliott situation. And that's going to actually wrap it up for this third segment. So yeah, thanks for listening to this one. Next up, we're going to do some who to start, who to sit, some good streaming options. Who's going to have a big game, I think, and then pretty much anything else that comes to mind as far as fantasy football. So thanks for listening up to this point. We'll be right back for the last segment, so stay tuned. Again, this is the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. It's been a fun show so far. And to finish off this last segment, we're just going to do some who to start, who to sit for Week 10, some good streaming options for each position, and must-starts for people who I think are going to have solid games. So let's get into it. Let's start off. If you have Devontae Adams this week, start him against Detroit. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank right here, but against Detroit, Brett Hundley, like I said, he didn't throw any touchdowns, or he threw for around 245 yards, but Devontae Adams was his most targeted receiver. So if you have Devontae Adams and you're playing in a PPR league, he should be your flex, and I think that he's gonna have around 8 to 10 points. So yeah, if you have Devontae Adams, start him. If you picked up Kenyon Drake and like you have him in your PPR league and he did good for you last week, I think he gave me 14 points last week. He's going up against Carolina, so I'm sitting him. I'm starting Doug Martin against the Jets. I know earlier I was talking about how he was trending down, but yeah, I'm starting Doug Martin. I'm sitting Melvin Gordon this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know most fantasy owners who have him on their team don't really have much of a choice to start or sit him because he's been their best player, but I really don't expect him to have a good game at all against the Jacksonville's defense. That front seven is scary, and they've just been playing really good so far this season. Let's see, who else? I'm starting Marquise Lee against the Chargers. Like I said, Blake Bortles has been doing well to find him so far this season, and he's stepped up big time since Allen Robinson was out for the season at the beginning of the year. I'm also starting Juju Smith-Schuster. Actually, I'm gonna do 2 for 1 right here. I'm starting Juju Smith-Schuster, and I'm sitting Martavis Bryant. If you got Martavis Bryant, I'm not starting him. The Steelers are a no-nonsense type of team, and they're like the Patriots. If you got a guy who's playing well, then they're going to go with the hot hand, and right now Juju's the hot hand. Antonio Brown's going to get his, but after that, Juju Smith-Schuster is also going to get his too, I think. And I think he's not going to have obviously as good as a game as he did last week. The last time he was out there, I think he had 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. Let me double-check his stat right here, but... he had 7 catches, 193 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I actually got his stats mixed up with T.Y. Hilton's. But if you have him, I'm starting Juju Smith-Schuster. And if you got Martavis Bryant, leave him on your bench. I really don't expect Martavis Bryant to come out and anything to really change as far as his play goes. So yeah, if you got him, sit Bryant, start Juju Smith-Schuster. Let's see, who else do we got out here? I'm starting Amir Abdullah versus Cleveland. He had a really good game last week against Green Bay. He only had 48 yards, but he had a touchdown. And I just feel like he's going to be due for a big game here. So yeah, I'm starting Amir Abdullah. Let's see, I'm going to start Alfred Morris, but again, I'm not too high on these Dallas running backs. I mean, it's a toss-up right now. I mean, they could play well or they could just disappoint. But that Dallas offensive line, they're always going to give any running back there a chance to succeed. So, yeah, start him. Start Robert Woods against Houston this week. Jared Goff has been finding him more and more as each game goes on. So, yeah, I like Robert Woods. I'm sitting any Tampa Bay receiver this week. Mike Evans is going to be out. Deshaun Jackson, the Jets are going to be pretty much zoning in on him big time. And if you're looking for like a streaming option, I guess, or Mike Evans is out, so you're looking maybe I'll pick up a backup receiver from Tampa Bay. Don't do that. Do not do that. I'm telling you, as the host of this podcast, do not do that. Ryan Fitzpatrick is still the quarterback. Fitzpatrick is not going to be working his Fitz magic this week, I don't think, especially against the Jets. The Jets are going to want this one more than Fitzpatrick is, I feel, because the Jets need this one, actually. They're 4-5, and if they want to keep competing for a playoff spot, which is just crazy to say to me. I mean, we all expected them to win no more than 3 games this season. So, yeah, if they want to keep competing for the playoffs, then you know what? I'm not starting Fitzpatrick because I think the Jets are going to come to play this week. And let's see who else out there. I'm not starting Vernon Davis against Minnesota. Minnesota's got a really good defense, and I just don't expect Vernon Davis to do too much against them. Let's see who else we got. DeAndre Hopkins. I guess you got to start him since he's the number 1 receiver in fantasy football right now, but I'm not high on him at all. Just because of it's going to be the Rams defense, and Tom Savage is just going to... He's going to be scared out there. I think they're going to wreak havoc on him, so I don't think DeAndre Hopkins going to have a big game like he did last week. Last week it was against Indianapolis, and obviously there is a huge difference in defenses between Indianapolis and the Rams, so I'm staying away from DeAndre Hopkins. Let's see who else. I'm starting Josh McCown against Tampa Bay. He's been more of a streaming option. Like if he's on your waivers right now and you need a quarterback, go pick up Josh McCown. He's going against one of the worst, probably the worst secondary in all of football, in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary. So yeah, if you got Josh McCown, start him. If you need a quarterback and he's on waivers, pick him up and start him. I think he's going to throw for around 2 touchdowns, probably going to have around 220 yards. So, I mean, that's a pretty good game from a quarterback right there if you're looking for one. Sitting Carlos Hyde against the Giants this week. Carlos Hyde, is his production starting to go down. Or actually, last week, he actually had 18 points. But I really don't... I don't really trust him against the Giants this week. So, yeah, if you have him, I'm just going to say right now, this is just like a hunch. I'm saying sit Carlos Hyde. For those who are scared that Ezekiel Elliott's going to be out and you think that, you know what, Dak Prescott, he's going to have trouble since he's going to have to do it on his own. So I'm going to sit him. Don't do that. Start Dak Prescott. He's going to have a big game against Atlanta, I feel. So, yeah, start Dak Prescott. If you have Lamar Miller, I'm going to sit him this week just because of the Rams' defense. I don't think he's going to do much. Let's see. Who else do we got? Let's see. Joe Mixon, that's a start against Tennessee right there. I wouldn't start Demaryius Thomas against New England. I think that they're gonna shut Brock Osweiler down, so I don't think Demaryius Thomas is gonna have a good game this week. Golden Tate's a must start against Cleveland, and Adam Thielen, he's a sleeper guy. I'm gonna start him this week. He's kind of off and on, but I think this is going to be one of these games. I know his last game that he had before the bye against Cleveland was big. He had 5 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown, so that was about 18 points right there. So, yeah, if you have Thielen, start him. Any of the Dallas running backs, I know I talked about Alfred Morris earlier, but if you have any of the Dallas running backs like Rod Smith or Darren McFadden, don't start them this week. See how they do after this week and then go from there. Brandon Cooks, I'm not starting him this week against Denver. I know Denver's defense hasn't looked that good, but they always show up to play against Tom Brady. So if you have Brandon Cooks, I don't think he's going to have all that big of a game. So I'm not starting him this week. Excuse me. I'm starting Alvin Kamara against Buffalo. I know Buffalo has one of the better rush defenses in the league, and they have actually one of the better defenses in the league, but Kamara is he's too good right now not to start. So yeah, if you have him, I'm throwing him out there. And Mark Ingram too, just pretty much anyone on that Saints offense still. The Saints have a high-powered offense. They got Michael Thomas, they got Ted Ginn Jr., Kamara, Drew Brees, and Mark Ingram. So yeah, anyone on that team I'm starting, even though the Buffalo Bills have a good defense. Michael Thomas, I think he's due for a touchdown this game. So I'm hoping for it. I really need to start picking up some wins. I'm currently 5-4 in one of my money leagues for the in a 12-man PPR league, so I need him to really step it up. I need a touchdown out of Michael Thomas. But, yeah, if you got Kamara, Thomas, if you're going to stay away from someone, stay away from Ted Ginn. But he's like a wild card. You're not really sure how he's going to end up. I mean, he could, like I said, he could always go for 2 catches for like 30 yards, and that's going to be it. Or he could go for 2 catches, which ends up to be around 80 yards and a touchdown. So, I'm not really sure about Ted Ginn. If you have him, I'm going to sit him this week. But, yeah, that's all I got to say about those Saints players. On the Bills, as far as the Bills go, I'm starting LaShawn McCoy. I think he's going to bounce back after that bad game against the Jets. They're coming off their bye, I believe. And Tyrod Taylor is just too good not to start right now. He doesn't turn the ball over, and he's going to get you at least a couple of touchdowns. So, yeah, if you got him, start him. Let's see, what else do we got out there? DeMarco Murray, I'm sitting him. He's just been really disappointing so far this season. He's ranked 25th among running backs in ESPN fantasy leagues. So, yeah, if you got him, I'm not starting him. I'm not starting Derrick Henry either. They split carries a lot, and they just really Tennessee's not really a team who runs the ball too much. And then I noticed, too, that DeMarco Murray, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury over the last couple of weeks, I think it was. I think last week he came out for a little bit in the game to deal with that. So, I mean, running backs and hamstring injuries do not go together at all. So, yeah, if you got DeMarco Murray or Derrick Henry, leave them on your bench this week. Really don't trust any Tennessee running backs right now. It's like it's been kind of weird. I've been like waiting for Derrick Henry. It seems like he's been like Tennessee's like waiting to. They're trying to make him the guy now, but it just hasn't really worked out. It's like you're at that point, right? And you got like these 2 running backs, and you know one is about to get the reins and he's going to get the ball a lot more, but like you're just waiting week after week for that to happen because you know what's going to happen. Like I got Derrick Henry stashed on my bench right now, waiting for him to become the guy, but I feel like I'm just going to continue waiting. So if you got Derrick Henry or DeMarco Murray, like I said, just sit them this week. They're not really worth the start. Don't think they're going to do too well against Cincinnati's front 7. Robbie Anderson, I'm starting him. in any league. Even if you're good at wide receiver, he's a guy who's going to play well against this Tampa Bay secondary. He's caught 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games, I believe it is. Let me just double check that stat because, we all need to be right. Yep, 3 touchdowns his last 3 games. And like I said, Tampa Bay has one of the worst secondaries in the league. So if you got Robbie Anderson or he's on waivers, pick him up, start him. I think he's going to have a really good game. He's starting to turn into Josh McCown's favorite receiver. So, yeah, pick up Robbie Anderson and start him. He's going to be a good player this week. I'm not too sure on Carolina's defense as far as how they're covering wide receivers right now. I'm talking about Devontae Parker for Miami. He's a really... that's a toss-up right there. I think you should start Devontae Parker this week. Jay Cutler loves throwing it to him. And I know Devontae Parker's been dealing with injuries, but if you got him, I'm starting him. He's been a really solid player in fantasy when he's out there. Obviously, he's no use when he's not. So, but yeah, I'm starting Devontae Parker. Let's see who else we got out there. I'm sitting Chris Thompson. Last week, he didn't do too well against Seattle. He only had 5.5 points against Seattle in a PPR league. And Minnesota's got a really good defense. Their linebackers have been playing really good so far. I like their safeties too. So, yeah, if you got Chris Thompson, I don't think he's going to have really all that big of a game this week. I think I said it earlier. I'm going to say it again. Start Matt Forte against Tampa Bay. He's going to have a big game. I'm sure of it. I picked him up in one of my leagues. I got him going. T.Y. Hilton against Pittsburgh. That's going to be a toss-up right there. Pittsburgh finally has decent corners the last few years. Their corners have been just brutal. But this season, it seems like they finally fixed it. So, yeah, I'm going with T.Y. Hilton. I'm starting him. Let's see who else. Let's see. I'm going to sit Kelvin Benjamin against the Saints this week. I know people probably traded for him or picked him up because he's been okay so far this season when he was at Carolina. But I'm sitting him this week. I don't trust him yet. I'm going to wait. I'm more of a wait and see type of guy. I'm a wait and see type of guy in fantasy football. If I'm not sure how you're going to do, I'm just going to sit you, and if you play well, then I'll start you. But other than that, you're just going to have to show me. As for must-starts this week, Evan Ingram, that's a must-start, tight end from the New York Giants. He's going to be playing in San Francisco. He's been getting the ball quite a bit this season with Odell Beckham Jr. and Brandon Marshall being out and all those other receivers being out. So, yeah, he's a must-start. Christian McCaffrey, that's a must-start against Miami. They struggle against versatile running backs constantly. Let's see, who else is a must-start? Matt Stafford, that's a must-start against Cleveland. Jordan Howard, he's a must-start against Green Bay. He's always going to get around 20 to 30 carries a game. So I think he's going to go for maybe around 100 yards and a touchdown. Let's see, last couple of games, he hasn't actually scored a touchdown in his last 4 games. I think he's going to be due for one against Green Bay, and I think he's going to get it. I mean, he's been solid still without even getting touchdowns. So if you got Jordan Howard, that's a must-start right there. Don't even think about taking him off your bench. Antonio Brown against Indianapolis, that's probably the biggest must-start. He's going to have a huge game against that defense. So, yeah, if you got him, start him. Another player for starting and sitting. Sit Jordy Nelson against Chicago. If anyone's going to have a big game, I think it's going to be Devontae Adams. But other than that, I don't really trust anyone on Green Bay's offense. Let's see, who else do we got? Le'Veon Bell, he's gonna have a huge game. Let's see. Yeah, it might be it right there for my starts. Oh yeah, Dion Lewis. If you have Dion Lewis and you're thinking about starting him, I know that he's starting to become the feature back in New England right now. So if you have him, take it easy with him. I have him in my league, and I'm really debating as to whether I should start Devontae Adams or Dion Lewis. And I know that earlier I said start Devontae Adams. I'm probably going to end up going with him. But Dion Lewis, he's been getting most of the carries for the Patriots. He's finally the lead back for them. So I think this week, don't start Dion Lewis since it's against Denver. But after this week, if you got him, I'd start playing him a lot more. And yeah, it's just a guy who I'm really about. Let's see, who else do we got? Leonard Fournette, that's a must-start too. I believe he's playing against I can't remember exactly. Let's see, let me check it on the schedule. He's playing against the Chargers, yeah. Leonard Fournette, that's another must-start right there. He missed the last game because of suspension, so he's going to come out running the ball hard. And I just expect he's going to have a big game. I'm sure of it. So, yeah, that's how I feel about starting and sitting. Again, I gave some people who probably, if you need a quarterback, pick up a guy like Josh McCown. If you need a running back, pick up a guy like Dion Lewis. And those last players that I was mentioning now, guys like Antonio Brown, Jordan Howard, and Leonard Fournette, those are guys that are going to have really big games. So if you got them, start them. I know Antonio Brown, that's no question. But yeah, it's been a fun show throughout. I really enjoyed talking fantasy football. And that's going to actually wrap it up for today's show. We'll be back actually every Thursday for the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. So like I said, if you're not busy on Thursday night, or you need some fantasy advice, come to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and I'll have it for you. Thanks for listening again. Once again, this was the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Got to get that name out there. I'm your host, Jesse Tapia, and thanks for listening to today's show. We'll be back next Thursday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.